Hey guys, how you doing today? It's P.E. Gilbert, your blogger, writing consultant, and the author to the fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter. And today we have the honour of an interview with the author and film director, Kenneth Mader. Kenneth has directed the films Carnivore and Displacement and has written the book Afterlife, which is part one of the Arcadia Chronicles. Here is the interview. Enjoy. So I'm a big movie buff, and as I'm the interviewer, I would love to hear about the film side of you. So where do you come from, and has this place featured in any of the movies you've directed?
Yeah, well, I'm actually originally from Chicago, in the States, and yeah, actually my first feature, Carnivore, was shot there. I shot that there, and that was a pretty long process, actually. We started way back in 1989, and it was like a 2.5-year filming adventure, and then another 9 years or something to finish post-production. So it didn't finally come out until 2001. But
Wow.
at that point, yeah, it was crazy. Quite the journey on that thing. And then after that, I actually moved to Los Angeles and started my career here. So.
Brilliant. That's some dedication. One film, 9.5 years, 10, 11 years.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So yeah, and I'm hoping to go back on my next feature to film back in my hometown again.
Brilliant. We'll come to that later then.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the 3 greatest influences on your career as a film director? Or in other words, who do you admire most in your industry?
So there's more than 3, but I'll give you my top 3. It would be Christopher Nolan, James Cameron, Gilbert. Right. So yeah, I'm heavily influenced by those 3. Spielberg, obviously, in my earlier life, and and Cameron as well, as they were both kind of coming up around the same time. And then of course now, Chris Nolan is huge. And then if I had to go back to more classic directors, I'd say Frank Capra and Orson Welles would be my 2, more classic.
You've picked great people. Those are fantastic individuals to admire, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. I agree with all of them. I absolutely love their films. In the biography section of your IMDB page, it says that you, and I quote, work at the intersection of character-driven narratives and high-concept genre stories. Forgive me, but what is a high-concept genre story? And please, could you give an example or 2?
Sure. So high concept is really just kind of a Hollywood term for, a way to describe your story in a sentence or 2. Uh-huh. So it's kind of like the very quick elevator pitch. If you can condense your story into that, then you've probably got a high concept, what they call. So for instance, I actually wrote a couple down. So for instance, like Blade Runner 2049, the new one.
Yeah.
They describe as, a young Blade Runner, Kay's discovery of a long-buried secret leads him to track down former Blade Runner Rick Deckard, who's been missing for 30 years. Boom, that's like it. So that pretty much kind of, condenses the story into essentially a sentence. Or going back to a James Cameron, film, The Terminator, the original. In 1984, a human soldier is tasked to stop an indestructible cyborg killing machine, both sent from 2029, from executing a young woman whose unborn son is the key to humanity's future salvation. So
I see.
A little bit more of a word salad on that one, but that's basically it. And then in my case on Displacement, my last feature, a young physics student must find a way to reverse a deadly quantum time anomaly and solve the murder of her boyfriend while battling short-term memory loss and time slips caused by the event.
That's brilliant.
So that's basically what like high concept is.
You've explained it very well. Thank you very much.
Oh. Yeah, it's a Hollywood.
It's necessary for every part of life, not just Hollywood. For your short 2018 film, Echoes, you won awards for Best Artwork and Best Visual Effects, plus you were nominated for the Best Drama Award. First, well done. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Secondly, why do you think your peers appreciated your work so much in this film as opposed to your other ones?
I think that there was a number of reasons, but I think the primary reason was that my actors were just fantastic. My talent did an incredible job under, somewhat limited circumstances. We shot it really literally over a weekend. So it was shot very fast. And they just did a great job and really, I think, embodied those characters and the emotional arcs within, just to an incredible degree. And there were a couple of younger actors, a couple of teenage girls in it, and they did a fantastic job. So I think it just kind of resonates with audiences in that way, that they're able to connect to those characters. And plus, it's also a ghost story. So who doesn't like a good ghost story?
I agree completely. I'm a big horror film fan as well, just to say.
There you go.
You have directed many, but not exclusively, short films. What attracts you to short films over feature-length movies?
So, it's interesting. It's not necessarily by choice.
Okay.
I actually short films actually kind of came to me. When I moved out to LA, I actually started working with actors, helping them with their demo reels as a kind of a side gig, right? Just to help pay the bills, so to speak, in between the larger projects. And out of that developed creating short films with these actors. And so my short film Passing Darkness was one of those, which we can talk later, that's gone on to literally to become this book that we just wrote.
No worries, that question's coming.
yeah, I'm sure. But that's basically kind of how it happened. And so a lot of these short films were actually actors coming to me to put together a film for them, and then it just kind of they expand, and they get into the festivals and do really well. But so I'm really proud of them, and it's a great tool to learn your craft too, on a shorter film where you're not taking quite as much risk as a feature. So that's how that happened.
That's great. Well done to you, and it's a real credit to you and your talent that people come to you and you make films for them. Good films, I should say.
Thank you very much.
Continuing with that line, you are a very talented individual and have directed films in almost every genre, including, as we've said, the horror genre, the sci-fi genre, and romance, among others. If you could direct a genre of your choice, what genre would you choose and why?
So I would have to say my favorite genre is sci-fi.
Okay.
Probably crossed with supernatural, paranormal. But that would typically be my genre of choice. And I think in large part due to the fact that, I've been, a sci-fi and a science fan since I was a little kid. And I think it's a really interesting genre to be able to explore things, about the human condition that perhaps you either can't do or is a little more difficult in, say, drama. Because in certain ways, sometimes, audiences may feel that they're kind of being beat over the head with a message or something in a drama. Whereas if you're working in a fantasy world, I think it's a little bit easier to work in that kind of an environment, and there's a little bit more freedom, I think, in terms of the writing, to be able to get some ideas out into the world that don't feel, like you're hitting an audience over the head. So
you're absolutely right. Alien, I think, is a fantastic example of that. But that's for another time, for what those subliminal messages in that film are.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most challenging part of making a movie, in your opinion?
Raising the financing. That's
Fair enough.
really pretty much it.
I can believe it.
And You know, because once you got that, you know, if you've done it before, the rest of it all, you know, I mean, it's not that it's easy, but it does tend to come together. And if you pull the right team together, you can make it happen. But yeah, the funding always seems to be at least the first initial hurdle to try to get anything done. Hence why I started writing books. They're a lot less expensive to create.
Fair enough. I actually thought you were going to say getting your film into the actual cinemas, getting it a theatrical release. I thought that would be the hardest part of making a film, but you've enlightened me.
Well, certainly on the backside, it's like once you've done it, then yes, yeah, distribution is always a challenge, and especially now, theatrical is tough. You know, we're almost basically in a situation where you almost have to do it yourself, you know, or find financing to be able to get it out there on your own. Distributors are reticent to these days, you know, put any kind of or make any kind of minimum guarantee offers or give you any money, you know, on the back end until it actually makes revenue. And you know, unless you have really big name actors in your film that can help drive that, it's, you know, we're competing now with all of these big movies, and so it's the indie world has gotten really challenging. And with the decline of DVDs, there's very little revenue available, you know, in streaming and stuff, you know, unless you are able to actually like sell your movie to Netflix or one of those places. We actually got lucky with Displacement in that we did license the rights to A&E for a broadcast on Lifetime. And that brought us back a good chunk of our budget. So that was really helpful. Yeah.
Well
But
done to you.
those deals are kind of few and far between now, you know, because everybody has started to move. You know, we're going back, that was back in 2016. So since then, you know, even the cable companies have started to move to just creating their own content, and they're not acquiring as much anymore. So it's becoming a challenge. Yeah.
Well, keep going, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the upside is with the internet and everything, if you're able to find your own audience, then you can, you know, you can market your content directly to your own audience. So that's really the you know, the upside of it is, you know, the trick obviously is in the doing of that and building your own audience and your own fan base, which I am in the process of trying to do. But that is really kind of the solution now, is to not rely on solely on a distributor to be able to get your film out there, but perhaps, you know, either do it yourself or partner with a distributor, but also in combination with doing some things on your own. So
That's great. Well, you need a lot of tenacity. It sounds like you've got it. Yeah, as I say, keep at it.
thank you.
Moving on away from the film side of you and moving to talk about your book, Afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
You have as we've said, you have published a fantasy novel, Afterlife, which is part one of the Arcadia Chronicles. You've mentioned one, but what are the other two ways, i.e., what are the three ways that novel writing is different to screenplay writing?
So I think the first and probably biggest one is that there's a lot more freedom in writing prose, you know, writing a novel than in a screenplay. You know, a screenplay is very structured. I mean, a novel is structured as well, but there's a very specific format in a screenplay, and you're essentially only writing, you know, visuals and dialogue. You know, so a novel, I'm probably getting into like the second part, is, you know, a novel allows you to get into your character's head, and you can kind of explore around in there that you can't really do in a script, right? You can play around a little bit, but, you know, voiceover is almost about the only way in a movie that you can kind of do that. And unless you know how to do that really well, it can become somewhat cliched. So yeah, it's, you know, that's kind of, I think, the biggest difference is, you know, screenplays are very structured and very in a way somewhat limited. You're somewhat limited in what you can do. At the same time, you know, working within that structure can also be helpful, because it does kind of put some boundaries on what you're doing. But that's kind of the beauty of writing books, is you're free to pretty much just do whatever you want, whatever your character wants.
Cool, great. Afterlife was based on your short film Passing Darkness, which you have mentioned. What was the key factor in making you decide to try your hand at novel writing? And why did you choose to write a book based on Passing Darkness rather than any other of your films?
So that's another interesting, very long-term story, because we shot Passing Darkness back in 2005, and it went out and did really well in the festivals and won a bunch of awards. And so we started, hearing from inside the industry, hey, you should expand this out into a feature or a TV series. So we did. We spent basically years developing it out into a longer, larger format story. And then I actually wrote a feature film script for it. And then we also developed it into a TV series, and I wrote the TV pilot, and we pitched that around Hollywood, and it got some really good response. Didn't sell it, but it was encouraging. And then we started looking at it as a potential web series. I mean, it just grew over the years into this giant thing. And when I was finishing Displacement, kind of looking for what my next project was going to be, and as the industry has begun to change, and it has become more difficult to try to sell original work or get original deals set up versus, what they call pre-existing IP, which is, books and comic books and graphic novels and games and whatever. So started looking at all this material we had, and basically, and it's a big idea. So it wasn't something that I could do independently. It had to go to either a studio or a network or Netflix or whatever. And so in looking at all of that, I basically said, we got enough here to create a book. Let's turn it in. Let's adapt it into a novel, and not just one novel, but a series of novels.
Brilliant.
Because it's a pretty large world now. So that's what we did. So I teamed up with an author friend of mine, and we co-authored the novel. Basically spent about 3 years writing it. So it took a while. Of course, I wasn't full time. Obviously, we were, cracking at it from, now and again. And last year we found a publisher, and it's out.
Brilliant. So, well done to you.
We're currently working on book 2.
Good. Well, keep it going. In my experience of writing a book, that is, not a screenplay, it's pretty challenging, demanding, and you've got to be tenacious again. So well done to you.
Thanks.
You're there. Why do you think readers will enjoy Afterlife? What is it about your main character, Elaine Ways, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, that will engage your readers?
So I think Elaine is really kind of an every woman who becomes, she overcomes adversity and grief and becomes a hero in this afterlife that we've created. And I think in that way, she's very appealing to the audience, to readers out there. And it's also just the world that we've created, I think, is something that's unique that we haven't seen before. Maybe touches of it, but it's an interesting take on what you might think it is. So I think it's a little bit different than what you might expect. And I think
piqued my interest already.
Right.
On a meta level, what does Afterlife mean to you?
So for me, it's kind of about finding meaning, and it's about destiny, and it's about letting go of the past, and kind of honoring your soul's true purpose, really, is kind of, for me, that's kind of what, at that deeper level, that's, for me, that's really what it's about.
Brilliant. Well, brilliant. As I say, very positive messages, and I think a lot of people will enjoy that message alone and learn something from it.
Hope
The
so.
last section of this interview, which is I'd like to hear more about you as a person.
Hmm?
This is one of my favorite questions. If you could go back in time and meet a young Kenneth Mader, what advice would you give him about the story writing and film writing processes? Or
Interesting.
filmmaking processes, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I've basically been a filmmaker since I was about 8 years old. My dad bought me my first Super 8 film camera, if you remember those way back in the day. Um,
No. How old do you
no.
think I am?
Well, I'm dating myself there, but yeah, that was kind of the go-to thing back then to start being a filmmaker. But interestingly, I mean, I did a lot of studying of other filmmakers and directors, but I didn't really concentrate on the craft of writing until I was a little bit older, like in my late 20s, early 30s. I think that is probably the main thing I would tell my younger self is do that earlier. You know, really drill down into crafting, the craft of storytelling,
Yeah.
and kind of learn that, because I was up to that point, I was kind of winging it, and when I look back on my writing back then versus what I'm able to do now, it's I'm rather embarrassed by stuff I wrote back then, and which I guess we should be. We always want to make sure that we grow, and I'm sure 10 years from now I'll look back on stuff I'm doing on the book perhaps, and say, oh my god, what was I thinking? But that would basically be it. Would be just kind of start a little bit earlier in getting serious about the craft of writing, or as serious as I was about the craft of filmmaking. Not that they're separate, but in some ways, if you're a director and not a writer, that's a bit different than being a writer director. So that was the thing for me. I think back then uh, I was more on a path in my earlier years of director, and kind of came to writing, at least professionally, a little bit later.
That's great advice. A decade ago, I wish I would have told myself something similar. But we live and we learn, and you have to start somewhere.
Exactly right. You do have to start somewhere. So that would be the secondary thing, would be that advice, but also start earlier. Make something. Just get out there and start making stuff. Especially now where we have that ability. It was a little bit tougher back in the day, but now with all the digital tools that are available, yeah, just start making stuff.
Good. Good advice. How has being a story creator changed you as a person?
I think perhaps I've become more compassionate. I think I've learned more about the world and about people in general. Uh, as you research, and as you kind of live life too, and have experiences, which obviously we grow as writers as we grow as people. But I think that's probably the main thing. Is I mean, I suppose I was always more of a compassionate person, but I think I've grown even in that way, to appreciate things, people, and just life in general more. You know, as we explore those issues and we kind of explore the human condition as writers, I've grown to kind of appreciate the human condition more.
Brilliant. That's wonderful to hear, honestly. I have read that you have another feature-length film that you will be soon working upon called Deep Focus. Am I
Mhm.
right?
It is, yeah.
Good. Please, can you tell us a bit about it, if you can?
Sure. Well, the irony is it's actually at its core about a viral pandemic. So yeah. Yeah, and so now we have, you know, the real thing has kind of sidelined it a bit for temporarily, but it's actually about it's a kind of a supernatural thriller, again in the sci-fi realm, that explores a female photojournalist who begins seeing images of death in her lens as she takes pictures, and she believes it's a coming pandemic, that she's having precognitive visions of a coming pandemic. So in a way, it's a kind of Contagion meets The Eyes of Laura Mars, if you remember that movie from back in the 70s, I think it was.
Again, how old do you think I am?
Well, you said you were a film fan, so one never knows. You might have seen it.
I
It's an
may have
old Faye
watched it. I don't
Dunaway.
remember it in the day.
Well, it's actually quite good. It's an old Faye Dunaway movie, so I would highly recommend it if you get a chance to take a look at it. And it's basically, she's a photographer who begins seeing through the eyes of a killer through her camera. So it's an interesting story. But yeah, this is going to be kind of fun, and I've already got the actress Elena Huffman from Supernatural TV series is cast as my lead. Oh, wow. And Bruce Davison, again, who's a Academy Award nominee and a Golden Globe winner, who was in Displacement, in my film Displacement, he's going to be in it as well. And we have Malcolm McDowell attached. So, the legendary Malcolm McDowell, which is going to be a ton of fun to work with him. So we're just basically at this point now looking to raise the financing and hopefully start shooting. Well, now probably later this year, once everything gets cleared up of what we're going through right now. So,
please God, it all goes well for you. It sounds really interesting and really exciting. Lastly, outside of filmmaking and book writing, what do you like to do with yourself? What do you call fun?
Yeah, I love nature. I love being out in nature, so I try to get out as much as I can. Whether it's out in the woods somewhere. I love the green, and also love the ocean. So anytime I can do that, I do. And what's probably obviously, I'm a movie buff as well. So the movie theater is kind of my temple. And I find myself, when they're actually open, I find myself there, frequently, probably, 2-3 times a week. I try to get out. Yeah, I see a lot of movies, but I also feel it's a learning experience for me too, because I do study film, and so, both good and bad. And, I think that's, it's always good to see the not so great films too, just to kind of understand what not to do. So, yeah, I'm a huge movie buff, so I do that a lot, and of course I also read. I mean, I love books as well. So.
And that brings our interview with Kenneth Mader to a close. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button, and tell me, what do you think of this great guy? Are you looking forward to what he produces next? In the description below, I have left links to Kenneth's books and films. Displacement in particular is a fascinating sci-fi film, and I thoroughly recommend it. Moreover, my debut fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter, is out. If you enjoy a book that is short, fast-paced, and full of suspense, check it out. I have left a link in the description below as well to that. Otherwise, until next time, keep well. Once again, guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and then you will be the first to receive more awesome content from my channel, and I hope to see you again soon.